I am Daniel Ortiz, and welcome to Book 101. Book 101 is all about the books that I read for the last 40 years. And today, I have my special guest. He's the author of several books, no other than Mr. Sean B.W. Parker.
Hi, Daniel. Nice to speak to you again.
Yes, Mr. Sean, as usual, can you please introduce yourself?
Yes, sure. I'm Sean B.W. Parker. I'm a writer and artist from the UK, and I'm here to talk about my past books, which are 8 of them.
Of course, and before we go on to our next book that we talk about, let's do the recap of all the books that we talk about. First, we talk about Compelling Speech, the Stammering Enigma.
Yeah, compelling speech was published just earlier this year in 2023. Um, it's like an autobiography of a stammer and a stammerer, being me, and how that kind of sort of tends to play out in culture. It's a short book, but it's been very successful and got some great reviews so far, particularly in Stammer.
Congratulations, Mr. Sean. For sure, this book is interesting and lots of people learn from it. States of Independence from pop art to art rock and beyond.
Yeah, The Dates of Independence, that was published last year, 2022. I actually wrote it during lockdown, so there was a delay in its publication. It's a list book on controversial songs in the art rock genre and in sort of popular song in general, trying to tie in with the culture wars and cancel culture, how that affected the release of songs and what these songs actually meant. And there's lots of controversial tracks, and it's a fun read. It's not a deep intellectual thing, but it's a critical theory read as opposed to deeply deeply intense sort of the philosophical work.
Yes, people, if you want to know how Mr. Sean created or crafted the States of Independence, please do listen to our previous episode. And of course, last week we talked about bean soup.
Mm. Yeah, we did. That was written in the middle of a very difficult part of my life. After my arts venue had been closed, and I was going through some serious troubles. And that book, Bean Soup, is the semi autobiographical story of that, with pictures and poems and things like that. It's a bit of a compendium of different ideas.
Oh, yes, definitely interesting, Mr. Sean. And which one of your books we're gonna talk about today?
Right. Today is Swimming Uphill: Absurd Theories, which I published in 2017, um, directly after the arts centre I was talking about last week kind of closed down, and I was licking my wounds and created a uh, created a fictional, um, imagined sort of a novel based on a character I'd invented in Istanbul called Anthony H. Wolfstadt, and it's lots of the problems that go along with the culture wars through the eyes of Anthony, who is a ex kind of music writer, sort of down on his luck, aristocratic fallen, and trying to understand the state of the world as he sees it and how he is handling all this. So yeah, that's a little introduction to it.
Wow, sounds interesting, Mr. Sean. So, swimming uphill, what behind the title of your fourth book?
Um, Swimming uphill, it kind of refers to the act of swimming, which is obviously not directional. You can go in any direction, it's supposed to be able to. And swimming uphill it implies that it's difficult to go uphill, and you've got some resistance to that, which is very much how it can feel when you're trying to do an artistic project in the face of authority resistance. It's like trying to imagine Anthony there as a salmon attempting to do creative things and just being thwarted at every opportunity, partly by his own attitude, partly by him not being very good at the rules, and partly because he's got a sense of entitlement from his old ways. So I tried to bring all those things out in the text as best as I can.
So, Mr. Sean, can you give us absurd theories that you shared in the book?
Yes, well, in the book, Anthony is attempting to is kind of talking about a lot of the stories that are going on in the news and that he's going through at the place he's running at the same time. So he comes to all the conclusions of the absurd, which is the absurd sort of theories which we notice in the culture wars, where like an actor can become an American president for the second time. And of course, he's an actor, Anthony. So he's trying to compare his old Shakespearean past as a old British acting queen, as we'd call them, to what was happening with Donald Trump at that time. And then also because he's not very experienced in the running of an official kind of place, is always under the pressure of the licensing authorities and not understanding why all this is compared to the 50s and 60s when he was doing all that kind of thing. So his observation of the absurd is based on the changing situation that we still see around us now, and trying to understand the culture wars, basically.
Interesting indeed, Mr. Sean. And swimming uphill, absurd theories, how did you craft it?
I wanted to write something that was partly like a narrative novel, but also with the music writing and culture writing that I got used to over the past couple of years before that. So trying to span those things together into quite a thick novel, an actual book, sort of 250, 300 pages. And to have a narrative of the couple of years at which Anthony and his friend Turgot, I shouldn't leave him out, he's his foil, it's a Holmes kind of a Watson arrangement. So they've got Anthony's views with sort of Turgot trying to look on in a sensible way and trying to help, not always successfully. And so it comes together as a novel with the external gaze of the music scene, which is going very, very sort of predictably and boringly. And this upsets Anthony because he likes his passionate art, and that's all being ripped away from him. So, I wanted to make kind of a block verse. So there's not so much narrative, but lots of description, and also description of the world as Anthony sees it. So a lot of it's from his eyes, but a lot of it is also looking at him. And I don't know if that part of it's successful. It's up to the reader to decide that. But yeah.
Definitely. How do you develop your characters and decide on their personalities and backstories?
Anthony is a very being a sort of 40-something English white man, myself, Anthony is a relatable character, and having been an expat, I've met lots of expats as well. And the way I write is to sort of synthesize lots of different characters into one, and that's how I do my paintings and my art as well. It's a process of synthesis, and so you come up with somebody compelling because there are lots of different people in one, as people are, but then you're also able to conceptualize a character in front of you. Like Mr. Withnail, Richard E. Grant in the film Withnail and I is a dramatic construction himself, and it's just this incredible performance of the kind of thing that Anthony is, but Mr. Withnail's much younger than Anthony's supposed to be. So you kind of create this being by just imagining and all the people around you who've gone through similar such things, and then this is not the only book that Anthony's been in. He kind of crops up now and again in others of my books because he's such fun.
Oh,
Yeah. But with the Swimming Uphill, it's the first time he comes center stage, and we start to realize the reasons he's doing what he's doing. Yeah.
definitely, Mr. Sean. But before we go on, I want to shout out to the people listening in Belgium. Thank you, Belgium, for supporting this podcast. Because in Flanders, I got 65% audience share. Brussels capital at 19%, and last but not least, Wallonia at 15%. Again, thank you, Belgium, for supporting this podcast because this podcast is created to empower writers all over the world, like Mr. Sean B.W. Parker. So, Mr. Sean, what is the best advice you receive as an author?
Best advice I've received as an author. It is very hard to find because I never listen to advice. I've hardly received any, and I don't know that many people who are interested in that part of my life. That
Okay.
could be being unkind because lots of people are often writing very kind and nice things. I just I don't know. It's so difficult because you write these things; they're their own little world, and then people are trying to understand them, and they just say, "Oh, that's good," and you say, "Well, thank you." So I'm trying to fish around for a response to your question, and best advice I've got is carry on. You do great work, and that's enough for me, I suppose.
Okay, so how do you feel about the current publishing landscape and the rise of self-publishing?
Oh, good question. Well, the the rise of self-publishing is a very healthy thing because it enables you to get around the restrictions of editors who tend to have a different sort of priority, which can be based on the market or against sort of political forces. So you're able to go out and do your own thing, and then to formulate your own network. And before you know it, your own little publishing house or your own self, you have a network that you've designed, which will still be in some way successful. It's not going to be successful on a J.K. Rowling level, but as we've seen with what's happened to J.K. Rowling over the last couple of years, is that sort of success is it's a very mixed business because your entire strategy can become destroyed by political forces working against you. In her case, that's been identity politics. Um, the the publishing houses are now a part of the captured or infiltrated um, system where lots of sort of progressive politics forces have basically taken publishing, arts, music, and sort of political establishments all over the world in the leftist progressive movement. Anthony Wolfstadt, this character of mine, is nothing progressive or leftist about him. He's much more of a independent individual character. So and a publishing house should be able to publish someone like him and not say we agree with him, because I don't agree with it and anything Anthony says. You know, he's a constructed character, but the editors don't seem to realize anymore what a constructed character is. They think if a character actually sort of talks about those words, then they must be true. And so there's a huge problem with literalism in the publishing world right now, which is directly connected to identity politics. So that's my answer to your question. It's a bit more complex than you might have expected, but it's there's a problem in publishing, and that's identity politics. Let me put it that way.
Very well said, Mr. Sean. So, what are you currently reading, and how does reading influence your writing?
At the moment, I'm still reading Jonathan King's autobiography, who's a successful pop sort of producer in England, sold 60 million records, and he's a wonderful bon viveur. He's been through the justice system, and he's just a very, very interesting character. So I'm on his autobiography and a novel of his. I'm doing two at the same time. I also read multiple articles a week in my academic role for False Allegations Watch. So that takes up all the rest of my time. There's always something to read, isn't there? And in online world, in Substack world, you're being surrounded by articles left, right, and center if you're a thinking type. So there's always something happening.
Oh, yes. So, can you give us a sneak peek into any upcoming projects or books?
Right. Well, I talked to you last week about sort of put, Panopticon, which is a collection of poems I've got coming out next year. Um, I'm also trying to decide between two different books as to what to that I'm working on at the moment. There's one actually based on art, rock, and pop art, um, which is another passion of mine, of course, and also something from Justice Reform. And I'm trying to decide which one to finish off to go next. So I can't, I don't want to say too much about them to be a hostage to fortune. So, but yeah, I've always got things on the go.
Yes, good luck for your upcoming book,
Thank
Mr. Sean. And how much of your personal experience is reflected in your writing?
you. uh, a lot, a lot. I've had a very interesting life. I tried to fill up my time because I'm a creative type of person. So lots of things have happened, and so when you get a character like Anthony and his companion Turgut, they are to a certain degree reflections of parts of yourself, but they're not whole parts. They're parts of, because people are complicated. That's the beauty of people, and these two characters are the sensible and the stupid side of me, for example. But also, I've got sort of female characters in my books and plays, as well, and short stories. And for example, female, and people from Turkey, where I used to live. There's all kinds of different things, and when you're in the flow, when you're in your flow state, a character can just appear based on something from your subconscious that you had no idea about, and you've got to go with that. And before you know it, you've got a character. It could be Mr. Daniel Lucas in my next book. You know, why not? It just like pops up there. So, and that's the kind of thing that happens because you mustn't control your subconscious, and that's the joy of kind of character creation when it works.
Are there any topics or genre you have not tackled yet but wish to explore in the future?
Oh, wow. I tell you, I'd love to be able, or to one day possibly do like a historical novel. Those things are like sort of a like such a mission to accomplish something like that, to to attempt to please the historians who are going to call you out on everything, and also the reading public who want to have a fun ride. To get those two parts of the population happy in one thick book or any length book is a real achievement. So I'd like to enjoy more historical novels. That's the thing that I'm going to do, and also one day when I'm probably a very old man, come out with one myself.
Definitely. So, Mr. Shen, before we go on, I'm inviting you to listen to my other podcast, Food 101, our third season, with Chef Alessandro, one of the best executive chef in one of the best restaurants in downtown Toronto. And listen to our latest episode. We talk about Thanksgiving, people. Thanksgiving. In Canada, we celebrate Thanksgiving on the 9th of October. So please do listen how to debone turkey, stuffing, and a lot more. And plus one more, our books are out. Not only one, but seven volumes, people. Volume 1, Food 101, Volume 1 Basics, 2 7 is all about my 100 episodes of my first season of Food 101. Available on Amazon and leading online bookstores worldwide. Mr. Chan, swimming uphill absurd theories. If you go back and revise the book itself, which part of the book you want to revise?
Yeah. I have to say, after hearing about the Thanksgiving, now I'm really hungry. That sounded great over in Toronto.
Yes.
um, what would I revise going back into that? Swimming uphill. Uh, I suppose I would try to flesh out Anthony a bit more. I guess people often say that about a creative character, to explore a bit more aspects of him. I probably have to go back to reread it again because I haven't for a year or so, and just to see how much he'd been explored and how much is me and how much is Turgut and how much is the situation in which they're in. Thing is, once a book's out there, just like a painting, like a spontaneous expressionistic painting, you want to leave as much of the expressionism in there as you can. And that's the problem with the editing process. You want to clean things up too much, as we've talked about before. And it's like I'm very hesitant to go back to change things, whether it's to clean it up for identity politic reasons or for kind of making it a better book in inverted commas, because there's no such thing. It is what it is, which is a horrible phrase, but you know what I mean. And
Yes.
it's probably best these things are left, I guess.
Very well said, Mr. Sean. So, what inspired you to write this book?
This, a bit like kind of Bean Soup, as I was talking last week, it was also very much the consequence of a trauma of the arts venue I was mentioning being closed down by local authorities. So I was sort of trying to process that into a more positive reaction, an artistic reaction, which is what I do in life. And so I was trying to describe the vibe we were trying to create there, and we succeeded in creating, and also the reasons that these things might go downhill, which is a lack of experience or a certain kind of lack of care, and so it was a reaction to that situation about 6 months later, in a completely different environment, because that's the best way for me to process difficulties, is to create art out of them, basically. So yeah, that's where it came from.
Swimming uphill, absurd theories. How do you approach the writing process? Do you have a routine?
As I get older, I've got a bit sort of, more of a routine, being much more of a 9 to 5er now, in my sort of more sort of, just getting older, basically. But at the time I wrote this one, it was like it was a collection of things that I'd written over the time of having the venue, and then getting over the venue, putting those together, and having then trying to interpret them sort of through the eyes of Anthony, and starting to rewrite them through his eyes. So it's the kind of, this is how I go about almost everything I make. As I say, it's a synthesis of what happened, what will be compelling, and and then to create something new out of that. So it becomes, I suppose, a synthesis is the best way I can possibly say it, which sounds a bit impenetrable to our listeners. Maybe they're like, "What's he talking about?" It's just it's a composition of lots of different influences. That's what Anthony is, and that's what the book is. And in the end, and that's why the book is actually block type. We don't have lots of little paragraphs. We have lots of long, thick paragraphs, which, like Kant or something, you got to read through. But hopefully they're not that challenging. They're just quite sort of sparky, So it looks like a philosophical book. Once you get into it, it's a bit more of a pop art sort of joust.
Very well said, Mr. Sean. Swimming uphill, absurd theories. What are your struggles in writing with?
What are my struggles in writing it? Well, it's the fact that, as we're saying, that it's a book coming out of a traumatic time, which that little period of the last decade was. Obviously, it's the genesis of it is difficulty and sort of strain and grief, and then you kind of put it into what it becomes, which is a positive thing to be read. And so the whole of that process, that the birthing process there, is its own difficulty, its own struggle. Perhaps that comes through in the text. I don't know. Swear words in this compared to anything I've written, which is it was a surprise when I read that back, because I'm not a sweary guy, but Anthony is. So it
something else.
Yes, that's right. And so there are a couple more of those in there than, it's a trigger warning, but I don't think anyone listening to this is going to be put off by that.
Swimming uphill, absurd theories. Do you experience writer's block when you're writing it?
No, I mean, it's not a thing that comes into my world as writer's block, because if I'm not getting inspiration, which is not a common thing, it's a thing that comes now and again. Get yourself in the right state and it might happen, is lovely. But perspiration, not inspiration, is a cliche to use, but it helps, because just go about it in a different way. Go and get an old essay, start to rewrite it. Get an old thing that you've done, start to rethink that. you can attack the writing process in lots of different directions. I can anyway, and that's part of the joy for me, is to see where an unexpected thing is going to go. So it doesn't have to come from just doing the first kind of words on a page. You can attack it from different directions, is what I'm saying.
Wow. Interesting, Mr. Chan. So, is there a message or theme you hope readers take away from your work?
Uh, I guess at the end of the day, taking in toto all of the things I do, all the books and the albums as well, for that matter, is the point that creativity is the highest value to me. There's a lot of people in the world at the moment have their different sort of the value systems, and can be morality or humanity or be kind or politics or power, all these different values, or spirituality. The one for me is creativity, and I hold that as a templar of what makes me happy, what makes the people who sort of listen or actually read me, um, they take it seriously. Is this as an actual thing, and it's ignored quite a lot of the time because people just think it's indulgent, and there's nothing indulgent about it. It's like a human need, and a part. And as I say, if you can create a positive thing out of trauma, that's art, and that's a lot of the work that I do, I suppose.
Yes, indeed. And listen notes, thank you for my listen score of 26 and belong to 10% popular show globally. Thank you, listen notes. And please do grab a copy of my latest climate change book, Earth Fever, The Unraveling Climate and a Race to Restore Balance. Available on Amazon and leading online bookstores worldwide. Sean, swimming uphill, absurd theories. What else you can say about it?
Well, what can I say about that? It's a book now that's six years old for me, so it's and that's no problem at all, because that's the series we're doing. We're going back into time here in this exciting way. It's like it's a thick book. It's not anything like that, like the compelling speech or Bean Soup, which are only 100 or so pages. This is like, it's a biggie, like 250 to 300 or so. Um, as I say, it's it's you can dip in and dip out possibly, but it would take a brave person to do that, because you'll probably be a bit turned off. It's a bit more easy to go through it sequentially and attempt to get into the world of Anthony and things like that. And it's got a picture of me on the front to actually give it a bit of sort of personalization, but it's almost like I'm acting Anthony. So it's Ziggy Stardust kind of approach to character creation, that David Bowie Ziggy, where there's this character. Is the author that character, or is he not? And the ambiguity inside that, I think, is quite interesting, and it's very meta. It's very postmodern, and I find that fun. So hopefully the audience will find that fun too.
So, Sean, what are your preparation in writing Swimming Uphill?
What was the preparation? Just as I say, coming out of that difficult time, putting all the things together, all of the notes I'd had, and attempting to get something positive out of that, and going, this will do as a book, and a thing that we can create with Anthony in the middle of it.
Oh, yes, definitely. So, how is your writing evolved over the years?
Oh, this one is like very much the sort of, this one and the Bean Soup just after it are the end of the history I have as a music and culture writer, where everything's a bit gonzo, which is 50s and 60s expression for the stream of expression, things coming out as they want to, in a slightly drunk way, and quite a lot of it was drunk, and that kind of chaotic scattershot style. Um, these two books were the end of that, and after that I've gone much more sort of disciplined, but not to a boring level, I hope, just much more of a storyteller now, going from point to point in a sequential, more adult sort of way. So yeah, we've gone from scattershot of the old days to a more mature state now, I guess.
Yes. So, Mr. Sean, how do you handle criticism and reviews, both positive and negative?
Yeah, I've had very few sort of negative reviews because I don't think I'm big enough as a writer. I think if I was bigger, I'd get a lot more kind of hitbacks, sort of from the mainstream press or whatever. But because I'm not on that scale, it's much more independent. People who read it have read it because they know they're going to like it, in a sense. So I don't actually get a lot of negativity. The ones that I do, uh, the criticism I do get tends to come from sort of other parts of my life which aren't connected to my creativity. People are always very kind about that aspect, and that suits me.
Very well said, Mr. Sean. Swimming uphill absurd theories. Can you please invite our listeners to buy all your books?
Sure thing. Yes, if they go to Google or their chosen search engine and put in Sean B.W. Parker, SEN.B.W. Parker, they can see my 8 books that we talk about on there. And Swimming Up Hills, halfway up normally, being released when it was, with a picture of me on the front, so it's quite easy to spot. And yeah, they can find it there. And there's a couple of other sites as well where it's available, like on kind of eBay and things like that now and again. But the, the safe one is Amazon, as always, for better or worse.
Definitely. Let's support Mr. Sean B.W. Parker because if you support him, more books to come. So, Mr. Sean, which book of yours we're gonna talk about next week?
Yeah, next week we'll talk about the Devils of Bognor. I should get a book I can say a bit better than that. The Devils
Oh,
of Bognor, which was published in 2016.
The Devil of Wagner. Oh, sounds interesting. So, catch you next week, Mr. Sean, and thank you for your time.
Lovely. Thank you, Daniel. Always a pleasure.
Morrigan people, see you soon.